How fare you, Rayla? The quartermaster, did he assign you a tent?
He tried.
Oh, and...
I refused it. Best to sleep beneath the stars, little chance of a foe catching you off guard.
Rain accepted, perhaps?
I'm not made of sugar, ma'am. I'm not gonna melt.
One sees very few women in the ranks, let alone in the special forces. How did you come to join?
On merit? Proved I'd be of use.
Yes, well, naturally. But how exactly?
I was 15 when I went to enlist. But the sergeant in charge of signing folk up told me to scurry on home. So I proposed a wager, arm wrestling. If I won, he'd let me join. If I lost, I'd pay him 100 crowns.
And that kind of coin? You had it?
No, so I had to win. As we sat down at the table, across from each other, he laughed and rolled up his sleeve. When it was over, all around us were laughing at him. Then I just followed orders. Did so well enough to draw the king's attention.
I must go. We'll speak later. So, Gascon, the soldier's life. Does it suit you?
About the same as the bandit's life did.
I beg your pardon?
The tents are cold, the food's shite. On the plus side, plenty to drink, most days. A skirmish here, a scuffle there, Nilfgaardians one day, elves the next, and whoever we rout, we rob of what they've got.
Requisition, you mean? Fully in accordance with the laws of war.
Oh, please. Save your excuses for your father confessor.
The Duke of Dogs. Whence the name?
Not certain I should tell you. It's a personal story, somewhat.
I insist.
So, thing is, I'm a werewolf of sorts.
Did I hear werewolf?
Of sorts. You see, when the full moon glows in the night sky, I transform into a creature that's half man, half dachshund. And then all the other hounds of the night hearken to my command.
Oh, forget I asked.
With pleasure.
I can't stop wondering. How did your strays break into the tower in Lyria?
They exploited its chief weakness.
What weakness is that? I oversaw its construction myself. Walls 5 feet thick, bars and grates of the sturdiest iron.
All tremendous, I'm sure. But how much do you pay the guards?
What? I don't know. The garrison's commander is in charge of that.
Let me tell you then. Not much, Meave. Not much at all. From atop a throne, it's hard to spot the little things. Example, a guard hard up for coin, or one with ambitions. But seeing that's second nature to even the most ordinary bandit. Take any castle door. To open it, to open all, one needs but a pouch of gold.
It's time I attended to other matters. Farewell.
Your Grace, how fortunate you're here. Behold what wickedness is afoot.
I'm trying to behold Sir Ake, yet I cannot be sure what.
Reynard and Gascon, my lady. Caught in the act of playing face cards.
Oh, that. Indeed they are. Good.
Good? Games of chance, good. Why, they are evil's very claws. Corrupting, tearing at the soul, seeping venom into the heart.
I wouldn't worry about Reynard's heart, Sir Ake. As for Gascon's, too late already, I fear. Besides, they're getting along, that's what matters. If cards do the trick, so be it. Does the good book contain an answer to every question?
Each and every query, without exception.
What does it prescribe a mother betrayed by her son? Tender forgiveness or unflinching firmness?
A moment while I ponder. There's a verse in chapter 2. A child who doth with waywardness defy his mother and father deserveth discipline most severe. Strike him thus heartily, unless thine heart stilleth thy hand.
But one could interpret that any way one wishes.
To thine own self be judge and ruler, spoke the prophet Lebioda. For thou alone shalt answer for thine deeds before thee.
There's a certain wisdom to those words.
Yes, your majesty. One need but gaze deeply into the verses, and oneself.
Farewell, Ake.
Yes, Your Grace?
How has it come to this? I, Queen Meve of Lyria and Rivia, must prowl about the underbrush like a common bandit. And you, General Reynard Odo, once proud commander of 4 elite regiments of footmen, now lead a gang of deserters, bandits and scythe-wielding peasants.
I do so proudly, Your Grace.
You must be joking, Reynard.
Your Majesty, under your husband I served 10 years, under you another 8, and never in that time did I fight for a more worthy cause. We seek not to grab land or stifle a peasant revolt. We fight for all the North, for our freedom, that of others. And you alone didn't give up. Didn't even consider bending the knee before Nilfgaard.
Yes, all true. Yet look where it's brought me.
Your struggle has but begun, Your Grace, and I will do all in my power to see you triumph in the end.
I cannot forgive myself one thing, that I failed to see through Caldwell's schemes. He must have plotted treason for months, years even, yet I suspected nothing.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Your Grace.
Easily said. Ugh, if I'd only realized it in time.
Nilfgaard would have found a different traitor, or sent an assassin north. It was unavoidable what happened. The Blackclads would have attacked in any case, and we'd have stood no chance to defeat the foe in open battle, repel him, drive him out.
So, had you been there when the peers assembled, you also would have voted to bend the knee?
No. My honor would never have allowed it. I'd have thrown myself into the fire, and probably died a fool for it. As matters stand, I still have a chance to thwart the invader, his intentions. It seems, in a twisted turn of fate, I should be grateful to Caldwell.
It's time I attended to other matters.
The Lyrians arrived at an ancient, half-desiccated beach. Its trunk sat atop a tangle of thick roots, and scraps of paper covered with tiny scribblings fluttered over it from top to bottom. Travelers crowded all around. Barefoot refugees, bony pilgrims, peddlers with armored escorts, and shifty-eyed men with the haggard look of deserters,
The Wayfarer's Beach.
Rayla said.
Travellers of all sorts swap tales here. Perhaps we can glean something about our enemy's movements.
Or paint the enemy a clear picture of our own.
Gascon interrupted.
Nilfgaardian spies no doubt flock to this tree like flies to particularly pungent dung.
Meve decided to proceed cautiously. She pitched camp in a nearby clearing and sent a scout dressed as a peddler to investigate the Wayfarer's Beach. Yet long hours passed with no sign of the soldier.
Gods be damned!
The Queen snarled.
Reynard, send some men to follow his tracks.
The Lyrians found the scout's body in the woods a few leagues from the Wayfarer's Beach. His corpse revealed clear signs of drawn-out, cruel torture. Meve could only hope he had managed to hold something back from his captors. Soon after entering Edirn, Meve ordered a halt. She wished to sit with Black Rayla and plan their onward march, for Rayla knew every path in the realm, including ones not drawn on any map. They were hard at work when shouts rang out among the tents.
One final time I shall say it! As your senior officer, I order you to depart the training grounds, or...
Oh, what? Pray tell, you'll have me drop and give you 50?
What is the meaning of this?
Your Grace, I had thought to use this interval to drill the recruits, teach them...
To walk.
to maneuver, Gascon. A world of difference. In perfect harmony must soldiers traverse the field of battle. Otherwise, they could break formation. The enemy would penetrate our lines, and our army could be slaughtered.
And therein lies the rub, dear Reynard. Army. This is no army, but a band of partisans, if we do not adapt to the rules of desperation. If we adhere instead to the Academy Codex, we shall lose. Laying traps, wiping tracks, that's what we should teach the lads. Not marching to the beat.
All my eye. A fighting force must have discipline. Otherwise, tactics and planning are impossible. A soldier must obey orders.
A point on which we all agree. And since they are mine to give, I order you both to calm yourselves at once, and never air your squabbles in front of the men again. Our resources are limited. We cannot do everything at once. Prepare your proposed plans for training the recruits, and I shall decide which we shall follow. Clear? Then get to work.
Your Grace,
Meave heard Reynard call out from behind her.
a scout's returned. Claims to bear an urgent message.
The Queen halted her horse and waited for the soldier to reach her. He abandoned all formalities and jumped straight to the point.
Milady, a black-clad caravan, armed to the hilt, rides this way. To believe the rumours, they're hauling a load of war loot back south.
Reynard gave the soldier new orders, then turned to Meave.
Sounds like a prime opportunity to replenish our coffers.
Indeed. An opportunity we cannot ignore.
The Queen said.
Your unit will block their path. Gascon and his men will hide in the woods and strike their flanks, while I shut the trap, attacking from behind.
Their plan established, Meave gave the signal to move out. A brief moment later, the fight began. Their plan ended in success, the Nilfgaardians crushed. As soon as the dust had settled, Meave tore the canvas off the nearby wagons to see what precious loot they had so carefully guarded. She expected to find gold, jewels, or exquisite silks. Instead, she saw dirty, terrified figures bound in chains.
Slaves.
Reynard muttered.
Their precious cargo. Slaves. Behold the glorious future the Empire brings us.
Meave ordered the prisoners freed and discovered they were Edirnian peasants on their way to dig canals and dredge swamps as forced labourers.
You are free. You can return to your homes.
The Queen said. If she expected words of thanks and gratitude, she was in for a disappointment.
What homes, my lady?
Asked one of the peasants, holding back tears.
Took our land, they did. Nothing we have now. Not a rag to wear, not a crumb to eat. Leave us, we die. Soldiers don't do us in, monsters will. Assuming hunger and cold don't get us first.
The Queen was about to answer when she heard Gascon, standing behind her, whisper,
Before you make any rash promises, please, some maths. Dozens of hungry mouths to feed, and weak bodies to defend, twice as many tired legs to wait for, while war rages all around. You do realise you cannot save everyone.
I attacked this caravan hoping to fill my coffers.
the Queen said.
Instead, I have only secured a new drain upon them. But very well. In these ill times, we Northerners must help our own. Women and children in the wagons. The men shall march alongside to the rear. I warn you, if you cannot keep pace, we shall leave you by the roadside. Move out!
The Queen's gaze momentarily caught the eyes of an old woman her soldiers were helping onto a wagon. Tears of gratitude poured down her soot-stained face, across hard lines left by years of destructive toil. Meave was convinced she had done the right thing. As Meave neared Gatburg, her eyes were drawn at once to the black pennants flying over its palisades. Nilfgaard's pennants. Her scouts found the city's buildings intact, its streets unstained by blood. Black-clad soldiers could be seen guarding storehouses holding loot pillaged from nearby settlements. Curiously, these soldiers were very few in number.
The gates stand open. Clearly the Imperials expect no attack, giving us the element of surprise. We can take back the city and
make off with the gold.
Gascon finished. Meave hated Nilfgaard and needed gold to maintain her army. Two very good reasons to attack Gatburg. Her decision made, she ordered her men to prepare for battle. Now the invaders would have to try their hand at defending.
Larven! Essay to Navain!
The Battle of Gatburg ended in Meave's victory, much to its inhabitants' displeasure. While she examined the Nilfgaardian storehouses, the city's mayor, an elderly gentleman with a walrus moustache, requested a private audience.
Your Grace, I am old. Kill me, you'll merely save my gout the trouble, so I'll be frank. You've but few men. You'll not spare a one to defend the city. When you ride off, the Imperials will retake Gatburg, peer into their looted storehouses, and seek revenge. You will be far off, while We shall be oh so terribly near.
The old man creaked down onto his knees and gripped the hem of the Queen's coat with knobby fingers.
Your Majesty, I beg you, leave the gold, or the streets of Gatbug will flow with the blood of our women and children.
Meave contemplated what to make of the fellow. Should he be praised for his forethought and concern for his townsmen, or condemned for cowardice and insolence? Black Rayla, however, had no such doubts.
Traitors all. Small wonder the town's untouched. Must have opened the gates wide for the southern scum. Now they want us to let them fill their pockets with plundered gold.
After a moment's hesitation, Meave had her soldiers load the stolen gold onto their wagons.
As you pointed out, Mayor, my army is small, which is why I need gold to expand it.
The mayor said nothing. He bowed to the Queen, then hobbled off, leaning heavily on his cane, as if this short exchange had cost him years of life.
What happened here?
Sadly, it was Rayla who met with surprise. 100-yard gap gaped in the unbreachable walls of Rossburg. The fortress itself was aflame, spewing black smoke into the sky.
How? It can't be!
There was no time to consider her question, for Nilfgaardian scouts had spotted Meave's company. The Queen knew battle was inevitable, so she gave the signal to form a defensive line, then drew her blade. The Lyrians met one note of luck in this song of woe. Rossburg had fallen, yes, but the Nilfgaardians, not expecting reinforcements from the south, had stationed only a small detachment to hold it. Meave led her men to victory and retook the fortress. Or rather, what was left of it. What they did not demolish during their assault, the Nilfgaardians burnt once inside the city. Countless charred corpses of both defenders and peasants seeking shelter from the invaders lay among the blackened ruins. Some had tried to shield their children from the fire with their own bodies. To no avail.
Gods be damned!
The Queen cried, pounding her fist against the wall. Meave was about to give the order to move on when she caught a stifled whimper coming from a pile of rubble. Her soldiers ran to the rescue, their bare hands digging through the fiery bricks.
Here! He's alive!
The man they pulled from the ruins had suffered horrible burns. His face was a stew of seared flesh and pus-filled boils, and he reeked of burnt meat. Seeing Black Rayla, the poor soul staggered to his feet and lifted a shaking hand in salute.
Engineer, Lieutenant Xavier Lemons, reporting for duty.
Medic! Send for a medic!
Lemons! What the devil's happened?
I know not. The East Tower, I led the defense. Heating oil to tan Nilfgaardian hides. A catapult struck. The cauldron tipped, burst into flames. The rest, I cannot say.
The fortress fell.
Fell? Damned Scoia'tael.
What was that?
Our preparations were perfect. A month, 2 we could have lasted, but traitors were among us. Elves, dwarves, planted charges on the buttresses. An explosion shook the tower, a hole gaped in the wall. Our men threw themselves in, filling the breach.
Vermin, filthy, rotten vermin.
I know you suffer, soldier, but Queen Meave wishes to meet with your sovereign, Demavend. We must know what's become of him.
Gone, luckily. He oversaw the preparations, then returned to Aldersburg. 3 days past.
Then let us do the same. Reynard, prepare our departure.
Hold your grace. Did anyone survive? Anyone at all?
The Nilfgaardians might have taken prisoners. There's hope.
How could they? An entire detachment? An entire city? The animals.
Soldier, my medics will tend to you as best they can. Then we can escort you home if...
This is my home, your grace. Rossburg. I beg you, let me join your company. Let me exact revenge.
I respect your fighting spirit, good man. But in your state...
Your Grace, I can hold neither shield nor sword, but I can still fight in my own way. I'm an engineer. I build siege towers, ballistae, bridges, whatever you wish. I pray, grant me a chance.
Such pain, such ferocity resounded in Xavier's rasping, distorted voice that Meve could not refuse his plea. Once the medics had bandaged his wounds, Meve's men set out towards Aldersburg, following Demavend and the Nilfgaardians. At one point in their journey, Black Rayla rode up next to Meve. The warrior's lips were a thin line, bitten to blood.
Milady, the road to Aldersburg leads through Moulderwood, where Eldane's Scoia'tael prowl. Same filth who killed my men and delivered Rossburg to the Black Butchers.
Rayla breathed deeply to steady her furious, shaking voice.
Please, milady, I ask you upon the holies, let us find them and destroy them.
Meve gave a slight nod. It seemed the road to Aldersburg would prove long and full of challenges. Meve's ears caught the sound of a ruckus coming from the camp.
Feet! Ingrid! A pox upon you all!
It was her quartermaster, hurling oaths at the peasants she had freed from the Nilfgaardian slave convoy. A few had stolen supplies under the cover of darkness and escaped into the woods. Terror and dread gripped the other freed prisoners. Meve mulled over what to do with them, and Reynard, as always, offered some advice.
'Tis high time they went off on their own, your grace. They are too great a hindrance. They slow our march, divert our soldiers from more important tasks. And now this.
Gascon was listening to their conversation. Meve shot him a questioning look.
I opposed taking them in. So, for consistency, I now oppose forcing them to leave. We made their miserable lives our responsibility, did we not? Well then, that is a burden we cannot simply shrug off.
Let us not mince words. We cast off these peasants now, they shall die.
Meve said in the end.
Let them stay. But I want them watched. They cause any more trouble, military justice they shall face. Understood?
The freed prisoners sighed with relief. The infantrymen assigned to watch over them, however, grumbled their disapproval of the Queen's decision.
'Tis an army, not a shelter.
They said. Meve's ears surely caught the complaint. But the Queen had never let the opinions of others guide her in such matters, trusting only her own judgment.
Not liking the looks of this,
Gascon said, furrowing his brow. Meve followed his gaze. Before them, beside the road, stood a hut with a scorched thatch roof.
Why?
Huts abandoned, yet dried fruit and mushrooms hang from the eaves. Famine raging all around and no one's been tempted. I'd send a scout if I were you.
The Queen did as Gascon suggested, and sent 3 infantrymen to reconnoiter. They entered the hut and found only silence, that was soon broken by a blood-curdling growl. The soldiers ran out at full speed, tripping over their own legs. Meve drew her sword, convinced a horde of neckers or ghouls would soon attack. But her fears proved unfounded. Instead of monsters, out of the hut came a shaggy dog, a torn scrap of fabric clutched in its teeth.
Milady!
One of the soldiers began, his face red with embarrassment and his hands covering a hole in his breeches.
Was dark as a well inside, and that hound, it jumped out at us all of a sudden, biting it and snapping.
Bad boy,
Gascon said with a smile, then pulled a hunk of dried sausage from his bag. Bought by this generous offering, the dog calmed down at once. Further examination showed the dog was the hut's only resident. Like many others in Aedirn, its owners had disappeared without a trace. Their loyal mutt still guarded the premises, waiting for his master's return.
let's take him with us.
Gascon said.
Otherwise, he'll die here, of his own hunger or someone else's.
A watchful sentry like this could prove useful in our camp.
Said the Queen.
Fine, he can join. But he shall need a name.
How about Reynard?
Proposed Gascon, a cheeky grin smeared across his face.
That way, he'll come when you call, sit on command, and always be a heel. Always heel, that is.
Watch your words,
said Reynard. hand tightly gripping the hilt of his sword.
Or you'll learn I'm not at all as tame as you believe.
Enough, both of you. That's an order. As for you,
The Queen took a good look at the dog, who still had a scrap of fabric in his teeth.
since it seems you've a taste for the cloth of the nether regions, I dub you... Knickers. Will that do?
The dog wagged its tail vigorously, as if thoroughly pleased with its new name. Maeve's company marched off, a furry new recruit richer.
Yes?
This Eldane. Could you tell me about him?
He should hang.
I'd hoped to hear advice that will be useful to us in battle.
First of all, you can't rightly trust the bastard. He doesn't respect our laws, doesn't share our morals. The king once dispatched an envoy to Eldane, despite my advice to the contrary. Found the envoy the next day, eyes gouged out, shaft of his white flag jammed down his throat.
So, diplomacy's clearly not the wisest course. But what of battle? What tactics does he employ?
Like all elves, he's a worm. Avoids open confrontation, sets ambushes, attacks from the shadows, from midst the trees. It would be best to burn this whole forest to the ground, deprive him and his folk of cover, any place to hide.
Sounds rather drastic. Like tossing the babe out with the bath.
Believe me, they'd not hesitate to do the same to us. Not for a moment.
Rayla, how are you holding up?
Not certain I understand what you mean.
All Edirn is aflame. Nilfgaard's banners fly over its cities. Don't tell me you're not troubled.
Of course I'm troubled. I stationed at Rosberg for 5 years. Knew all on the crew there by name. But that's war. That's its nature. No sense bemoaning it.
I see. Just know if ever you wish to talk.
I won't, but I do appreciate your concern, ma'am.
I must go. We'll speak later.
Your Majesty, I've been meaning to thank you for allowing me to join your ranks.
Certainly, Xavier. I welcome all foes of Nilfgaard to march beneath my banner. But what did the field surgeon say? Have you not resumed work too soon?
I've strength enough to wield a hammer, though my scars still burn, and fiercely so. My lady, I've seen folk turn and frown at the very sight of me. If my appearance disgusts you, I can...
Nonsense. The Nilfgaardians, not you, should be ashamed. You've no reason to hide, no reason to cower.
Thank you, my lady. It means a great deal to hear that.
You've long served in King Demoven's army, haven't you?
Yes, Your Grace.
Why enlist at all? What prompted you to do so?
The king needed engineers. I answered the call.
Not terribly talkative, are you?
I can build any bridge, any ballista, but to talk, well, it hurts to talk.
I see. Well, do not worry. I prefer deeds to words, in myself and others. Other matters await my attention. We shall speak later.
As you wish, my lady.
Maeve and her companions neared the Moulderwood, a dense, ancient forest of trees whose tangled branches had witnessed the conjunction of the spheres. It was not until King Vidamont's day that a road was finally carved through the primeval thicket, significantly shortening the journey from Rosberg to Aldersburg.
Even when peace reigns, danger rules this road.
Rayla said.
Now no one dares travel it.
At the edge of the wood by the road stood an enormous willow. Its branches swept down to cover its trunk, looking for all the world like long tresses shrouding a woman's face. Maeve had an ill premonition. She did not like the sickly sweet aroma wafting from this tree, nor the metallic buzzing of insect wings. She sent a scout to investigate. He drew aside the drooping branches and stumbled back. There were men bound to the tree, covered in sap oozing from gashes in its trunk. Its heavy scent had attracted swarms of insects, flies, wasps, bees and beetles. They seethed over the bound men, crawling in and out of their ears and nostrils.
Eldane welcomes us to his wood,
Rayla whispered. Maeve stepped towards the tree and saw the men stuck to it were all still alive. Those the elves had caught recently writhed and howled for rescue. Those hanging longer merely followed the queen with half-crazed, bloodshot eyes.
Well? Are you to stand there all day?
Meve screamed to her dumbstruck Lyrians.
Free them! At once!
Her soldiers needed no more prompting and set about sawing at the ropes with their blades. As soon as they had freed the first captive, before even a word of thanks could be uttered, a flaming streak soared through the air and stuck in the tree. The oozing resin burst into flames, engulfing the prisoners as well as the soldiers who had come to their aid. Elder speech battle cries rang out from the woods as elven warriors launched their attack.
It's a trap!
Cried Reynard.
Defend the Queen!
The battle done, Meve surveyed the carnage, her breath still ragged. The thick stench of blood, sap, and ash she sucked in made her stomach churn and head swoon.
The Scoia'tael. I'd heard of their cruelty, but
The Queen said, sheathing her sword.
never have I countenanced a thing like this.
Black Rayla, who had just extracted her blade from between an elven gorilla's ribs, smiled darkly.
Worst is yet to come, my lady.
The Queen regrouped her forces and marched into the Moulderwood. The Lyrians sang none of their usual marching songs. Instead, they walked in silence, eyes darting constantly to their flanks. Meve's path took her to the village of Iconfurt. Unlike most settlements in the area, not a single human dwelled here. Instead, only elves and dwarves sat on its porches and stared at the passing Lyrians with clear aversion. Not a single greeting was extended to their allies in arms. Not a single peddler tried to hawk their wares. The only sound was that of snapping shutters and slamming doors.
Something's amiss.
Rayla said, furrowing her brow.
Order a halt, my lady, and give me a moment to look around.
You've a quarter of an hour,
Meve said as she dismounted.
and not a moment more.
The Queen sat in the shade of a large pear tree. She shut her eyes and listened to the chirping of crickets in the grass, savoring a rare moment of relaxation. But the calm did not last. Within moments, one of her scouts returned, a certain Sergeant Niedermere. Tears streamed down his weathered, scar-pocked face.
Lady, come with us, please. You'll need to see this for yourself.
The sergeant led her to the still smouldering remains of a mill. Her soldiers were picking things out from the ashes. When she got closer, she realized in horror they were human skulls, some no larger than apples.
Tell the villagers to gather by the well,
The Queen said in a strained voice.
or be executed.
The elves and dwarves attempted no denials. They admitted Eldain and his Scoia'tael had helped them round up all the humans in their village, march them into the mill, then set it aflame.
They stole our lands, defiled our names, beat us, murdered us in bloodthirsty pogroms.
Shouted one of the dwarves.
They had it coming to them. Got their comeuppance, I'd say.
Meve was no stranger to the cruelty of war, but the enormous evil she found in Iconfurt overwhelmed her. She felt a terrible weight on her chest, found it hard to draw breath, and her head spun. She felt she could hear the cries of humans being burned alive.
Ma'am,
Whispered Reynard.
you must pronounce something.
Or simply turn the matter over to me, Your Grace.
Rayla interrupted.
I know what to do.
Do as you see fit.
Meve said quietly, gaze fixed on the ground. The Queen snapped her reins and rode out of the village. She did not want to witness the bloody massacre of non-humans her soldiers were about to perpetrate. What she had seen at the mill already sufficed to keep her awake for many nights to come.
What was that?
Meve asked Reynard, who rode beside her.
A scream. A man's, I think.
Need to investigate. Gather a few men and we ride. Quickly!
The screaming came from a small settlement. When Meve rode up to its farmhouses, her horse reared and neighed in terror. Necrophages swarmed all around. The monsters surrounded a few Nilfgaardians who were trying, with no success, to chase them off with torches. Reynard swept his gaze over the carnage and said,
They cannot stave them off, and their armor is too heavy for them to flee.
Meve was uncertain at first how to act. But when she saw ghouls snatch one of the Nilfgaardians and rip him to shreds, she drew her sword.
No one deserves such a death. Not even a Nilfgaardian. Follow me!
The Lyrians and the Nilfgaardians fought the monsters side by side, a united force. But when the last necrophage fell, the soldiers immediately returned to their respective divisions. Meave's soldiers looked at the invaders askance, uncertain what would happen next. Suddenly, one of the Nilfgaardians broke ranks and fell to his knees.
Your Grace, I know you have no reason to trust us, but we are not enemies. We hail from Geso, a land Nilfgaard conquered and made its province. We did not ask to fight in this war by force. We were conscripted.
The soldier hefted his sword by the blade and handed it, hilt first, to the Queen.
We yearned for a way to desert, and we have found it. Your Grace, allow us to join your army. We long for the Empire's defeat every bit as much as you do.
Meave helped the kneeling soldier to his feet.
The enemy of Nilfgaard is my friend, no matter who he is or whence he hail.
The Lyrians were clearly displeased with their queen's decision. The black-clad deserters from Geso would need to earn their trust. On the edge of the Moulderwood there stood a small village, Crumhorn. The hamlet was surrounded by a high palisade, while the villagers carried makeshift weapons, flails, axes, and nail-studded planks. Life as the Scoia'tael's neighbors was clearly not easy. While her men rested, Meave approached two of the villagers. They lowered their heads in respect and fidgeted nervously with their shirt hems.
My lady, reckon you ought to know. Elves meeting traders in the woods at night. Buy swords, herbs.
Rayla, who had overheard the conversation, twisted her mouth in a hateful scowl.
Hawkers stink worse than vermin. Willing to help murderers for coin. Please, milady, we must find them and punish them. You, talk. Where do these meetings take place?
The peasants looked at each other. One scratched his head, the other toed the sand. Finally, one of them blurted out,
Could tell you, my lady, yes, but only for gold.
I see I'm dealing with shrewd men of trade. Fine. Your fee.
Meave took a few coins from her pouch and tossed them on the ground. The peasants dropped on all fours and started snatching the coins from the grass, ignoring the contemptuous gaze of the Queen's soldiers.
Them hawkers wheel them goods to the old fishing hut north of here. Scoia'tael come a-crawling from the woods, the first crow of the cockerel.
The Queen told her men to prepare to fight the Scoia'tael and their abettors. Black Rayla sat on a fallen trunk and sharpened her sword. The grinding of stone on blade sounded a grim promise. Meave arrived at the hut the villagers claimed to be the meeting point for the Scoia'tael and the hawkers. Torchlight flickered amidst the trees, and she heard the sound of hushed voices.
Your Grace,
whispered Rayla.
They're in our grasp. We must act quickly before the elves retreat into the woods.
Worry not, Rayla.
The Queen said, patting her on the back.
I shan't let a chance like this slip. Attack!
The Lyrians rushed out of the woods at the unsuspecting elves and merchants. Moments later, the sound of combat filled the dark wood. Meave pulled off a rare trick. She laid a trap for the Scoia'tael in their own woods. The surrounded elves fought to the bitter end, choosing death over human captivity. Meave cracked open the hawkers' chests and stared at a mass of tangled oakum. Perplexed, she dug deeper and found the real goods hidden underneath. Bolts with entrail-pureeing hooks, leg-snapping bear traps, and incurable poisons.
Instruments of cruelty,
said Reynard, looking over the chest's contents.
Designed to deliver maximum pain and a prolonged death.
'Tis shameful to fight with such things.
The usually quiet Ache blurted out. Gascon did not share in the general gloom. He reached for one of the arrows and balanced it in his hand with curiosity.
A corpse is a corpse. It cares not how it became one. And these marvels, oh, my lads could do fine things with them.
The ends justify the means.
Meave said curtly as she grabbed a weapon from one of the chests. Her soldiers followed suit and equipped themselves with hawker arms. Soon enough, the elves would feel the pain they'd hoped to inflict on others. Meve was discussing some matter with Gascon when a scout approached. His blood-streaked uniform revealed the matter to be urgent, so the Queen cut short her conversation and requested a report.
We were scouting, milady, and we found a cave entrance. Small scattering of elves guarding it, but we took them right out.
Gascon scratched his chin.
I'd wager 10 Novigrad crowns there are more Scoia'tael squirreled away inside. We strike afore they know we've snuffed out their guards, we might well catch them by surprise. But we must act quickly.
Then let us act. Gather some men and prepare them for an attack. But keep quiet.
The Lyrians crept into the cave. They moved carefully, noiselessly even, avoiding notice for quite a while. Nevertheless, elven warriors soon came pouring out of a side cavern. When the Lyrians broke the elven ranks, Meve was convinced their foe would retreat and regroup. But to her surprise, the Scoia'tael fought to the bitter end. She concluded there must have been something truly valuable hidden in that cave. As Meve entered the next chamber, her nose caught the stink of blood, pus, and urine. Then she understood. The elves were using the cave as a field hospital. Wounded fighters lay by the cavern walls. They made no attempt to defend themselves, nor to beg, nor to make peace with the gods. They merely watched the Lyrians calmly, with stark contempt.
Milady,
Whispered Rayla.
you saw what the Scoia'tael are capable of. What they do to humans. They would have no mercy for...
Reynard, usually calm, could not hold back and cut Rayla off.
What, pray, do you suggest? That we murder the wounded?
The warrior responded in a whisper, slowly emphasizing her words.
I suggest you leave. Leave me and my men. We'll take care of the rest.
Meve swallowed with difficulty. The rancid, clammy air caught in her throat.
We'll await you at the top, Rayla.
The Queen moved towards the exit, keeping close to the walls. After a long hesitation, Reynard followed. Rayla joined them later that evening. She spent a long time washing the blood from her armor.